The
podcast.
And we're live. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Felix O'Mercu and my co-host John Flannery. How are you doing today, John?
I'm fantastic, Felix. How are you?
I'm good. And with us today is a good friend of ours, Joseph Maher. He's a renowned traveller in our age group. How are you doing today, Joseph?
I'm doing grand.
Yeah, and today he's going to be doing an episode of Joseph's Journeys, where he tells us an exciting story about a trip he took to Bosnia, where he had an exciting encounter with a taxi driver. Take us away, Joseph.
Yeah, so a brief background on the trip. I like to go to a few places at once and for one holiday. So for this particular journey in 2018, I went from Prague to Vienna to Bratislava, from there to Budapest, Ljubljana in Slovenia, and then Zagreb, Croatia, to a small place in Croatia called Kotor. Then from there on to Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina via Split, and then from there on to Belgrade in Serbia, and then final stop of Sofia in Bulgaria before heading back home. So about a bit over 3 weeks, I think, and it was a bit interesting. But
that's a lot of traveling in 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I think for most holidays, you can't really be too comprehensive about going to everything. You're not going to remember everything. But as well as that, you can see most of a city in 2 days for most cities anyways, particularly in the Balkans, where the cities aren't quite as big as the more Western European cities.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few episodes of misadventure, but all the good stories anyways. But so one of them was in the former Yugoslav republics, so Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia. There's still a bit of remnants of their legacy of communism. So one example of it would be in their transport services. They're usually not too good at all. What I mean by that is you'll have in Serbia anyways, as a classic example, there's to go on a bus, you first have to go to the bus station, and then there was a place for getting your ticket, then a place for verifying that you had the ticket where you had to get a coin, then a person manning a turnstile where you had to put the coin in so you could get it on, and then the bus driver who would then check the ticket.
Okay.
So you could see all this sort of division of useless jobs that were legacies from a communist past, just work for work's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you could see this gives a bit of background for going from Croatia.
Mm-hmm.
So their bus services are usually better, but again, they're not up to even Irish standards, which So I was in Croatia and coming from Kotor, a small place, a Roman settlement, and leaving via Split. It was a much bigger city, so I knew it would have better transport links with the rest of the places I want to go. So to get to Sarajevo, presumably a bit quicker than.
And sorry to cut across you, Joseph, there, but just for our listeners, Sarajevo, that is the capital of Bosnia, yes?
Yeah, it's the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the bus in Split, it made several stops along the way. It wasn't a direct bus, which I didn't know at the start, and it arrived in Split 3 hours late. And it was due to arrive in in the capital of Sarajevo at 3 a.m. Well, it was due to arrive at midnight, but ended up arriving at about 3 a.m.
And how long were you traveling for?
I think about 6 or 7 hours. They made stops along. It wasn't a direct.
Yeah.
Was the bus packed?
Yeah, I think every seat was full. So.
Wow.
Oh wow! So you were sitting beside a stranger for 6 hours.
Yeah.
What did you eat? What did you eat throughout the 6 hours?
Well, for the trip, for a continuing team is budget when it comes to food anyways. In terms of experience, I don't think if you're going to go to a museum in Prague, you may as well pay €5. You're not going to go there again, or if you do, it'll probably be quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in terms of food, my philosophy was I'll be able to eat properly when I get home. So
and when you say home, you mean back to Ireland after 3 weeks of traveling?
Yeah. So
jeez, Joseph.
I think on the later stage of the trip, it deteriorated a bit, where at the start it wasn't as bad. I was mainly relying on Eurosaver hamburgers from McDonald's. I had some.
How many of these would you eat a day? How many Eurosavers?
5 or 6.
Wow.
But there was some luxury. In Vienna, a cheeseburger cost the same as a hamburger, so I only had to pay €1 there to get a cheeseburger.
Bargain.
Yeah, I made great use of that. And
That's brilliant, Joseph. So on this bus trip, did you have a few Eurosaver burgers stocked up, or?
no, the Eurosavers was at the start of the ship but as I said, it deteriorated a bit. So I think sunflower seeds was the main go-to at this point.
Oh my god.
And so for the entire 6-hour bus trip, you were eating sunflower seeds.
Well, like after about 3 days of not properly eating food, you don't really get that hungry anymore.
Fair.
So we're reaching Bosnia at 3 a.m. Is that where we're at?
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, as well, at this time, I was having my old reliable phone, the OnePlus One, which was 5 years at this point, and it was a very decent phone, but unfortunately, its battery life only lasted about 2 hours with on screen. So anytime that I was going around, it had to be on airplane mode when it if it was on, or else it had to be fully powered off so I could actually use it. Unfortunately for this trip, it didn't even have full power going into it. So when I reached Sarajevo, the phone was, I think, at 5%.
Wow.
Oh my god.
So,
And this is 3 a.m. in the morning in a foreign country in Eastern Europe. You know no one, and you have like one couple bars of battery left.
yeah, and it gets a bit worse because the bus was late. Like if it was scheduled to be at 3 a.m., that wouldn't be that bad. But because it was unexpectedly late, there wasn't even the taxis there.
Oh my god.
there was about 40, 50 people needing to, because the bus was full, needing to get a taxi, and it was empty. So there was eventually, I think, one taxi came after 20 minutes. But as well, another thing about Bosnia and Herzegovina is they don't use the euro. They're not in the EU.
Right.
Which was unfortunate because I didn't have any money in their currency as well. So I essentially found myself at 3 a.m. in a foreign country, in an abandoned taxi rank. An abandoned taxi rank, waiting for taxis along with 50 other people with no money.
Oh.
And 5% battery.
Yeah,
not a good spot to be in.
No,
And
I
some
still had
sunflower seeds in your pocket.
And I think it's important we just throw in here, Joseph travels solo. So it's not that he's with like a few mates or family, around 50 people. He's solo in a foreign country with no battery. You know, like something could happen to him and no one would know. You know?
I was eventually the taxis did come. They must have some network of a WhatsApp group or something where they're messaging each other, but it was quite slow initially. So I was decided to the one car pulled up, and it wasn't a taxi car per se. It was more of a hackney, a car from the 1990s, I think was its license plate. A very heavy strong smell of smoke in the car. And it wasn't a taxi driver car. It was just some guy's car, like a 50-year-old.
Given a lift,
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised, because if he was doing that at 3 a.m., he must have been a bit drunk or not. So he didn't speak any English really, but one of the people on the bus was able to speak English, and he said, "Yeah, this guy will take you where you want to go for €5." Because that's the only currency I had on me.
Yeah.
So I had to get my phone out and show him where I wanted to go, and he didn't quite understand. First of all, I don't think he was too used to smartphones, modern smartphones really. So he was having a bit of difficulty with that.
And how far away was the place you wanted to go to? In terms of hours, if you could put a mark on it.
Well, it seemed to be on the other side of the city, I think.
Okay.
I'd say 20, 30 kilometers, not feasible to walk. The hostel was on sort of the outskirts of the city, and the bus depot was on the outskirts of the other side. So
ideal.
Yeah.
Well, as well as that, the phone wouldn't last long enough for the GPS to work, so I wouldn't be able to walk.
Yeah. So you're at this random bus station in Sarajevo, and you're talking to this guy who can't talk back to you, trying to explain to him where you want to go for €5.
Oh, well, I was a bit sleepy at that point, so I sort of just heard, "Oh yeah, this guy will take you where you want to go for €5." And that was good enough for me.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I didn't want to sit in. I didn't put my bag in the boot first of all, just in case he were to steal it. And then it occurred to me about halfway through the journey that it probably would be very hard for anyone to realize that I went missing if he just decided to kidnap me and take all my money.
Yeah.
It's
But
kind of late to get the realization while you're in the taxi, Joseph.
yeah, well, I thought that if I could sort of feign that my phone was on. So my
Yeah.
phone was on, but I was pretending like it had to be in airplane mode because it was at, I think, 3% battery now.
Mm-hmm.
From like even the brief like few minutes that I was using it. So it'd be switch it on for maybe a second every minute just so you can see, oh, he has a phone. It doesn't make sense to kill him.
Yeah.
Or he might be able to call someone first.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I was in the backseat as well, just so he couldn't really see what I was doing. Or he could, just so we know that I'll be able to track where we were GPS wise, so he can't take any diversions or anything.
Yeah.
He was very nice. Like he had some, when I said no English, it wasn't quite fair, like very broken English. So when we were passing the American embassy, he was a strong supporter from what I could gather of the Americans. So he was saying extra, extra, and that type of accent to describe it as being very good. And then passing a small enough museum, he was saying extra, extra to describe that as well. And as I was leaving, I was saying that his driving is extra X as well. I don't think he picked up on the on the slightly joking nature of it, but
Yeah.
it was grand enough. Now, as I said before, his car was very old, well, like fairly old for Bosnia. I'd say it'd be more on the lower end range of cars, which isn't too convincing that it'll get all the way there. Which
Yeah, of course. Like it's rattling. It's it's making noises it shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know.
So what I didn't know at the time when I booked the hostel was that it's up a very steep hill. So the car, it was struggling. It was heavily struggling to get up the hill. We're actually another thing just before I pass or like as I mentioned, on the side of it was a particular type of cemetery. Cemetery mainly due to the sort of ethnic, civil, and expansion war of Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1992 to 1996. And an interesting thing about the cemetery there, for what I presume was the Muslims, was they don't have headstones. They had, small obelisks. So, that thing in America, facing the other way from Abraham Lincoln, that Washington Monument, that.
Yeah.
So just loads and loads of miniature versions from faraway areas that looked like pristine white, well kept, just loads of them in the field going up this very, very steep hill. And the hill as well, it was cobbled, so very slippy, particularly in the warmer weathers. So fair enough to the driver, he was able to make it up the first hill. The second hill, however, he wasn't able to. It was too steep and too slippery. The car wasn't good enough. So that's where I was dropped off. And it was close enough, but...
So you walked the rest of the way?
Well, he said he was charging $5, and then he said, no, it's actually a $10. Or that's how he was making it out to be.
Okay.
I was annoyed at that, but I did end up paying him the €10 just because I didn't want to have to deal with any hassle. And in fairness, €10 for €10 wouldn't have gotten me half as far in Galway. So I was just like, okay. I did get a bit stingy, just like poor country. I don't have to pay as much for some stuff. Well, in retrospect, it was well invested, seeing as none bad happened. And at this point, the phone's battery had gone down to 2%. This was it being used sparingly, just as a sort of way that if he is going to kidnap me, then he knows at least that I have a phone. It's on for the moment. He doesn't know about battery life. And I could make a call and I can see where we are at the moment. So, for those reasons, it doesn't make sense to kidnap someone, especially when their luggage is on them and not in the boot of a car.
Yeah, of course. You'd get nothing from it.
No.
So you're on the way to the hostel now, yeah?
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I don't actually know exactly where it is. So I have to turn back on the GPS. When I was in the car, everything was off. It was in airplane mode, just using it to light up the screen, just on the off chance that when I see that he knows he's looking, when I know that he's looking, just so that so now that I had to turn back GPS on, I was able to get a rough idea. I knew that I was close to the hostel. I knew which direction it was in. It was further up the hill, but I didn't actually know where it was. I was walking around in a circle for a small time as well, because I wasn't too sure before then what was happening because the GPS wasn't coming up properly. And I was wondering what the chances are. Like, first of all, I was wondering what my options were. Would it make sense just to sleep out on a bench somewhere? Or would it be best to try and find a hostel, or would it make sense to go back to the city? The thing is, I decided that it doesn't make sense to go back to the city, first of all, because I don't know the layout of the city, and I'm not too sure if any hostel would take me. I don't have enough money, and I don't have any money in their currency.
Yeah.
So that probably isn't the best option. So then I decided, okay, sleeping out in the open, not that bad of a shout, but I may as well try my best trying to find the hostel first, and if not, then I'll find some bench or something to sleep on.
To sleep rough?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, like,
So
I didn't have an
it's
option.
on the
Like,
table. So it's on the table that you've arrived at 3 a.m., you've taken a dodgy taxi ride, and it's on the table you might not even be sleeping inside tonight.
well,
Just you and your seeds.
well, I think the sunflower seeds, they were gone by halfway in the bus journey, so like it didn't bring a substantial amount. Yeah, so but the only other option then would be just to be walking around until daytime. But even by then, my phone would be out of battery, so I wouldn't know where to go. Like there wasn't much of an option other than look for the hostel or else like sleep on a bench somewhere.
And what time is it at this point?
It'd probably be about 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock now.
Okay. So pitch black.
Yeah. As well as that, the streets aren't well lit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't even in the city, so like it was in the outskirts. So like it's not the best access either. So I was walking along the street for quite a while. Just there isn't a clear distinction between where one street ends and another begins. So I was walking along it for a while enough, and then since it was a youth hostel, it actually has a distinctive. There's a distinctive like logo. If you look up at the International Youth Hostel logo, it's sort of a triangle-like thing.
Okay.
And I saw that outside one of the houses, and knew that should be me. The only problem was that there was no one there.
At the hostel?
Yeah, well, it was at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, so what do we do now?
Well, thankfully, the door was open, so I just went in, and there was a little buzzer, a little bell that I think was connected to a buzzer to wake up the manager.
Okay.
And he was a very nice man. I think he said his name was Harris, so the name of the hostel was the Harris Youth Hostel. So presumably a hostel he owns, manages himself, runs, and all that sort of stuff. He was very nice. He said, "Look, it's late enough. I was expecting you early," and it's like, "Oh, the buses were yeah." And he was like, "Okay, yeah, here's your room." And I tried to pay him. I was like, "No, you can sort that out in the morning. I can deal with the passport and all that sort of stuff. It's too late now. Just go to sleep." And it's like, "Okay."
That's quite kind. That's very nice.
Like. Yeah, and well, before I went to sleep, when I was actually looking for the hostel on the street, my phone had already run out of battery. That's why I didn't actually know which building it was in. Like, I was looking out for I was pretty sure it was on the right street, but if Google Maps was wrong, then who knew?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so the phone was out before I even got to the hostel, and before he just showed me to my room, and before I went to sleep, I just said, "Is there a place to plug in my phone?" And then, as my phone and I both were being rejuvenated, me with sleep and it with energy from the socket, then all was well. New day for
all was well in the world. Fantastic. What an odyssey. Great saga.
That's a good place to leave it. You know, a story from coming in at 3 a.m. in the morning to being at home in bed. You know, safe and sound, recharging your phone.
From rags to riches, in a way.
Exactly.
So from rags to other rags, like a hostel is a dorm room. So there is about, I think, 4, maybe 6 other beds. They usually do it by 2, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I think in this room, 6 other beds and maybe 4 other people. So I remember anyways when I got in, it was like snoring, like there's loud snoring, but I knew that I'd be able to sleep through it like very, very handily now.
Yeah. No, so that's good. And then I assume the next day you bought yourself another pack of sesame seeds.
And a Eurosaver burger and sat on a park bench and you were happy out with 2 or 3 hours of sleep in you.
Well, like for breakfast, the usual diet would be, you know, the vitamin juice, the big cartons, 2 liters of apple, banana, mango, pineapple. Like those are very like
this morning.
Yeah, they're very handy for if you don't get breakfast. Like they give you energy anyways, and then chocolate milk sometimes in countries that had it, and then another time, if another staple diet for breakfast could be a bread roll with a bit of chocolate in it. just a chocolate bar, just break a bit off, put it in, and then tastes nice enough.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, thank you very much for coming on.
Brilliant.
That was a great story.
Thanks very
Thanks for
much,
having me.
Joseph.
And we'll end this now.
See ya.
All right, thanks, man.